Sonic the Hedgehog has finally been released after a troubled production that ended up being one of the more bizarre ones in the history of filmmaking, actually. So, if you're unaware of it, here's the story of how it came to be. Sonic is a video game franchise widely known around the world as the competitor of the Mario game series, with games across different platforms, different consoles, and the character present in other media as well, such as comic books and cartoons and all that jazz. A few years back, a live-action Hollywood movie was announced with James Marsden and Jim Carrey in the film. Now, a live-action Sonic movie sounded like a weird idea to most, but the fans were ecstatic at the time. And then we also heard about Detective Pikachu being made, which, as soon as the trailer started dropping, looked absolutely adorable. So the internet said, okay, this looks interesting. If it works for Pokemon, maybe it works for Sonic as well. Let's see how it pans out. And then the first poster and trailer dropped for Sonic, and all hell broke loose. The creators, for some unknown reason, decided that the original Sonic design would not work in a live action film and went for a redesign. And they ended up with something utterly terrifying. I'm including an image of how it looked like, but you can still find the old trailers with this unholy monstrosity in motion. It is unbelievable how awful it looked. What happened then was a massive shit show. The fans of Sonic were of course outraged, but even the general audiences criticized the look of the character. There were memes, jokes, even online petitions to try and change it to something less nightmarish and more resembling the video game versions of Sonic. Which was a long shot, because the trailers have already been dropping along with posters and the movie was almost finished. And then the unthinkable happened. Paramount publicly said they made a mistake with the design. They postponed the release of the film by almost 6 months and decided to use this time to completely redo the character. Now, think about it for 1 second. That is a massive step. It is unprecedented to do something like that. The only kind of similar thing I can think of is how All the Money in the World back in 2017 replaced Kevin Spacey, who was also already in the trailers for the finished movie, with Christopher Plummer, and they even made the original release date. But still, that was different. That was just reshooting all the scenes containing a supporting character, supporting actor, and re-editing the movie to put them in. In the case of Sonic, we're talking about a complete redesign of the main character of the film, a character that also happens to be fully CG. And CG is fucking expensive, in case you didn't know. Expensive and time-consuming to get done right. I mean, if you want example of bad CG, just go back and watch Cats. In any case, a few months later and the new trailer drops, and to everyone's surprise, it actually does look much better. Here's a pic for comparison. I mean, this is what they should have done in the first place. Anyway, now the fans were happy. The internet was beyond itself because it seemed like the first time ever that the pressure from meme creators actually worked for the benefit of people overall. And I even saw a lot of comments on the web going something along the lines of, I wasn't interested in seeing the movie before, but I have so much respect for Paramount now that I will actually go and see it in the theaters to support the decision. Well, perfect marketing, right? And it seemed to have worked indeed, because the movie was released about 2 weeks before the coronavirus lockdown and it escaped unscathed. It was the only big budget movie in cinemas at the time, and believe it or not, people actually went to see it. It made more money in its theatrical run, in its limited theatrical run, mind you, because it was interrupted by the lockdown, than any other video game movie before it. And that includes Detective Pikachu with Ryan Reynolds last year. Think about this. Detective Pikachu, a movie based on the biggest franchise in the world, gets beaten in 2 weeks by Sonic. Madness. And now Paramount released the film digitally, and so it's available for everyone at home. And I got to check it out, and you're probably wondering, is it actually any good? And the answer, surprisingly, is yes, it is actually fairly decent. I certainly enjoyed myself, and I think if I was 10 years old or so, I would have loved it. The story in the film is this. Sonic is an alien from a different world. Since his childhood, he was chased by people who wanted to harness and abuse his powers of running at super speed, which also sometimes generates massive amounts of energy. He escaped by traveling through different worlds, alternate worlds, and ended up on Earth. One day, he gets discovered by the government, specifically the evil Dr. Robotnik, played by Jim Carrey. And then, because of an unfortunate mishap, in order to continue his escape, Sonic has to get help from a local policeman, James Marsden, to take him to San Francisco, recover his bag of magical rings that create portals to other worlds, and get out of Earth, basically. So it's all a mix of a road trip, family comedy, and fantasy action film. On the one hand, we have the bonding between Marsden and Sonic on the way, and them getting in various weird situations because of Sonic's antics. On the other, there are action sequences involving Robotnik's robots chasing Sonic around, and there are also comedy bits done by Jim Carrey himself. I've read that in some of the scenes, the script just read, listen, there's music, there's Dr. Robotnik in his lab, and he's dancing, and that's the whole direction, and Jim Carrey was just improvising stuff left and right. And listen, it's not a great film. I wouldn't consider it to be a masterpiece, but at what it's doing, I think it's pretty good. It knows its audience, younger people primarily. It knows not to treat itself too seriously. It knows to just ignore some of its flaws and inconsistencies and weak plot, just roll with it and just says, look, this is supposed to be a bit of popcorn fun. Don't think about this too much. Some of the humor genuinely works. Marsden is good as the straight man to Sonic's antics. Jim Carrey is clearly having the time of his life as the villain, which is something we haven't seen in a long time. And the action sequences are actually really well done, particularly the chase sequence towards the end of the film. I was surprised by how competently made it was. So overall, I think if you judge it for what it is trying to be, I think Sonic manages to make it work, to be an enjoyable, fun ride for the entire family. Against all odds, it is a pleasant way to spend an hour and a half. And I never thought I'd say this, but if they do end up making a sequel, which is heavily teased at the end, I will probably go see it as well.